Great rewards don't wait, so why should you? Through the Invigor Book and Buy Grower program, you could earn a $30 per bag rebate when you book all of your Invigor hybrid canola by November 14th. Talk to your retailer. Terms and conditions apply.
It's time for RealAg Radio on Rural Radio Channel 147 on Sirius XM. RealAg Radio and RealAgriculture.com is your home for insight and analysis of the issues that are impacting your farm business. Let's get real and get connected with RealAg Radio.
Welcome to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio Channel 147, Sirius XM. It is Monday, October 20th. It is Agronomic Monday, and I am your host, Lyndsey Smith. It has been a fabulous weekend here in the Ottawa Valley, mostly because we started off the day with a rainfall. And for those of you who have been through a dry season, or maybe for those of you who live in, I don't know, parts of the prairies that it's always dry, after a significant amount of dry weather, there's nothing like that feeling of a decent rainfall to really lift your spirits. Now, for us here, personally, for our farm where we raise sheep, all of our sheep are out on cover crops, which is relatively early for us as far as when we pulled them out of the solar site. So we graze commercial scale or utility scale solar with our flock during the summer. Usually we keep them in there just as long as we can because, of course, there's ample feed. But with as dry as it was this year, we did move them sooner. And an observation that we've had is that, yes, we've moved them to cover crops. Yes, the cover crops did grow. That was great. But where we really noticed a difference twofold. One, the cover crop that they went to, they have been moving through it very quickly, much more quickly than normal, just because we haven't had the rainfall to keep that crop actively growing, even while they're grazing. So we certainly are not in the worst hit area of Ontario for the drought, and we are very thankful for any of the fall grazing that we've got because it just simply is much, much slower, much less volume than we're used to. The other flip side to this, and when we hop to my conversation with Peter Johnson right after the break, we definitely see a huge difference in water demand. Our ewe flock has been grazing soybean stubble, and the amount of water that they have been drinking versus when they are on a green and growing or even like a lush green cover crop, which is usually what we're contending with this time of year, the amount of water that they're drinking compared to that is just unbelievable. And so anyone who is grazing cattle remotely, off farm, maybe grazing, corn stalks or cover crops or aftermath, that water need is just astronomical because cattle are just so much bigger. And we just got a tiny taste of that with our ewe flock on soybean stubble. So there you go. That's always something to think about and to contend with. Now, on today's show, as I mentioned, I will have Peter Johnson joining me. I've got a laundry list of things to cover. He's got some ideas as well. So we'll be tackling sort of what the winter wheat and winter canola crop is looking like. Some questions about cover crops as well. A lot of questions about moisture use. But we've got one particular one about phosphorus that I absolutely want you to stick around for. I believe that's in the fourth segment. Need to talk about fall fertility applications and what it is that we need to unpack as far as making sure that the fertility that we're paying for stays put, and of course the environmental implication of, let's say, phosphorus or nitrogen movement off field. So we will tackle that as well. We'll also hear on today's show from Autumn Barnes with Alberta Canola. We're going to learn about a really cool research survey going out for Alberta farmers as well as agronomists, and it's your chance to weigh in on what you would like to see Alberta Canola spend its money on as far as research is concerned. So that's pretty cool. So stick around for that as well in our third segment. As always, if you've got feedback on today's show, you can give us a call, 1-855-776-6147, or if you're not into phone calls, like I'm not, you can text that line as well. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back with more RealAg Radio right after this.
Kochia sucks.
Big time. I hate it. Really gets in the way. Awful.
But not anymore. Get a head start on tough-to-kill weeds like kochia this fall with Volterra EZ and Fierce EZ soil active herbicide. Apply after harvest before freeze-up for up to 8 weeks of extended control in pulses, soybeans, and wheat next spring. Volterra EZ, Fierce EZ for kochia. Visit newfarm.ca/kochia.
I get to spend every day talking to farmers in the ag industry through RealAgriculture.com and RealAg Radio. But nothing is more fun than speaking to an audience live and in person. If you're planning an ag event, book a Real Agriculture speaker to make it a successful and memorable experience. Email shaney@realagriculture.com and you can book myself or any other Real Ag personality to speak at your event. Bring your audience all the fun, insight, and energy of Real Agriculture.
Soil health is under pressure, but real solutions start below the surface. Black Earth offers a full suite of humic solutions, from high-purity granules to powder, liquid, and soluble formulations, all powered by pure Humulite. Formulated for performance, backed by consistency, trusted by growers worldwide from one of the world's rarest reserves. Grow stronger with the power of Black Earth Humulite. Learn more from Mine to Market at blackearth.com.
Welcome back to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio, Channel 147, Sirius XM. With your canola in the bin, it's time to lock up savings for next year's season. Act now and save up to $75 per bag on DeKalb canola with Harvest Rewards, but only until October 31st. Visit DeKalbRewards.ca for details. All right, I am your host on this Agronomic Monday, Lyndsey Smith, and joining me now, it is our resident agronomist, Pete Johnson. Pete, how are you?
I am awesome. Thanks, Lyndsey. We finally got some rain. We've been crying for rain all the way through. The challenge now is, does it stop and let harvest continue? But man, there was a lot of fall crops and perennial crops that needed moisture badly. So the rain was welcomed, no doubt about that.
Mm-hmm. I will tell you. So there's a few things, and in today's show, we are going to perhaps unpack a few of these. Obviously, the dry bias to drought impacts, but also what happens when it does rain this time of year. And we've got a few things to talk about some fall seeded crops, obviously the winter wheat crop, canola, etc. But before we hop into that, I did want to just shout out, and Pete, I don't know if you put in a team, but I am looking at the standings of the RealAg hockey pool. And Pete, does the name Toppenish Tom mean anything to you?
It does not.
Oh, okay. So you need to play the farming game. So there's, I don't know if you've ever heard of the farming game. It's a board game. It's from like the late 70s, early 80s. And it takes the board game, the board itself, harkens to parts in the Pacific Northwest and different ridges that exist there. And Toppenish Tom is one of the players you can be. That's a farm. Anyway, Toppenish Tom is in second place right now, is where I'm going with this. So I don't know whose team that is, but hats off to you. That is a fantastic name. Second place with 154 points in our hockey pool. Marlin, 16 in first place. I'm not even going to mention where I am, but thanks to Cantera Seeds and Alliance Seed for making the RealAg hockey pool happen. And a reminder, we'll have monthly prizes and, of course, a grand prize at the end. Okay. Toppenish Tom. I love it. Okay, let's hop into it then. With this return of a bit of rain, obviously it's not going to solve all our problems, but did want to touch on, of course, emergence of our fall seeded crops. Canola, of course, goes in much earlier than the wheat crop. I will tell you, around here, Pete, we have a couple fields that actually are showing green. And for as dry as it was, I'm kind of amazed, also very impressed with our farmers that stuck it out and got that winter wheat in the ground, even if it wasn't to dust. So what say you, how is the winter canola and winter wheat looking, at least out your window?
So it's really like a huge divergence, okay, Lyndsey? And I talked with Brad down in the breadbasket of Ontario, Lambton County, on the heavy clays in South Lambton. And Brad planted a fair few acres of wheat. I don't know exactly, but the first field he planted happened to catch a shower. And so he's got this beautiful stand of wheat on that farm. and all the rest of the wheat he planted missed all the rain until yesterday, last night, and it's sitting in dry dirt. So it's going to germinate now. I'm not at all worried about the wheat crop. Generally speaking, you can plant wheat quite late. It takes a terrible winter to have it so that the wheat crop won't be there next spring. In actual fact, it's more about how do we get excess moisture and ponding on the clays as much as anything, or frost heave. So from that perspective, I'm not really worried about the winter wheat. When I drive around London on the loams around London, and you would say, gosh, we should have awesome wheat around London because those soils really wick moisture well. It's so dry that there's a lot of really variable stands. So there's parts of the field that are up and already have 3 tillers, and other parts of the field that the seed is still in dry soil. So that'll be a little bit more of a challenge at harvest because it won't be uniform, but the seed in dry soil will come now. Not worried about that. We will get a perfect stand, and it will make a crop next year. It'll just be a little bit tougher to manage when you had some that emerged maybe on September the 25th and some that isn't going to emerge until maybe October the 25th or maybe even October the 30th because the weather has turned cooler, and that means the wheat is going to grow slower. Everybody was raving about how wheat was coming out of the ground in 5 or 6 days in September. That isn't going to happen anymore with these cooler temperatures. Winter canola is a totally different story. And so typically, if winter canola does not get its root or its crown the size of your baby finger, then the chances of it surviving the winter go to almost zero. So the long-term winter canola growers, they often will not plant past maybe the 10th of September because they just don't generally get enough fall weather to get a good enough or big enough plant to survive the winter. Now, go back to 2024, the fall of 2024, and we had similar dry conditions and we had some spotty germination. And going into winter, we had some areas of these tiny little winter canola plants that only had 4 leaves. And there's no way they were going to make it. Well, guess what? We had enough snow cover. They got blanketed by snow. They made it. This year, as I drive around looking at winter canola fields, there are some that are excellent that got some rain, but there are fields north of London where, I don't know, let's say 2/3 of the canola got enough moisture to germinate and 1/3 of the field is barren as of yesterday's rain. That seed was there. It was in dry soil. Some growers did ask, should I go reseed? Well, there was no moisture to reseed into, and if they doubled up their population of seed, that's just added seed cost. So I'm fearful that those fields in the spring will resemble what they look now, because typically those canola seeds are going to germinate now, but the chances of them getting big enough to survive the winter are fairly slim, and they are big areas in some fields. It's not little patches here and there. It's entire knolls that might be a 5-acre block inside of a 100-acre farm. And then there's another, it's just big blocks all over the place. So we'll just have to wait and see. But canola, in some situations, I am a little bit concerned about.
Now, if it were winter wheat, though, Pete, the solution's easy. You just go in there with spring wheat, fill in your holes, and you've made everything better, right?
Well, yes and no. So
I'm kidding, everybody. I'm kidding. Yes.
I mean, you can do that, but then it's feed wheat, and those areas right. You plant spring wheat into is they will be harvested later, and and by we're just hopeful that the winter we won't need to do that, Lyndsey. I think we still have enough time that it can make it.
Mm-hmm. It is a question though that we will have to potentially consider. If you have with winter canola, it's the same issue with winter wheat. Is let's say you've got decent patches, but you've also got all these bare spots. Like on the average, do you keep the field or do you take it out? Do you right? And you're going to have to manage those patches somehow for some right, because we can't just let them become weed patches and whatever. So I agree. Potentially could be quite a headache come spring. So we're going to have to see what we have to manage after we make it through this winter. Now, I will say, I know that it has, of course, cooled off-ish, but I got to tell you, Pete, yesterday here in the Ottawa Valley was like 25 degrees. So this rain and this warm-ish weather, and yes, the forecast is looking like it's going to cool down, but I want to switch gears a little bit here to cover crops, cereal forage, that sort of stuff, because I know there were plenty of producers who put in potentially, oats or something like that after winter wheat, planning for a forage harvest because they were maybe short feed because of the dry season, etc. We are currently grazing cover crops with our sheep. And the difference, I got to tell you, like the difference in our more average years to this one, the difference in like just the lack of regrowth and or continued growth, like we moved on to cover crops because there was enough feed there, but they went through it so quickly because there just wasn't any moisture to continue having that plant growing. Did talk to a couple producers over the weekend that were taking, let's say, oats for oatlage, which I think is a great name. But of course, yield's pretty disappointing. So what are you hearing out there for the cereal forage, or I guess fall forage, we'll call it, as far as what farmers' experiences have been with the cover crop that went in?
Exactly what you said, Lyndsey, and it all depends on rainfall. There are some areas that have continued to get some little showers, and in those areas, the oats planted after the wheat crop for forage, they just kept coming. Less rust this year because less humidity than we often see, and most growers who are growing for forage will control the rust regardless, because if you don't, it just decimates the crop. But less rust pressure, and where we got those little showers, there have been some tremendous yields. The crop was thick and lush, and it wasn't as tall as it often gets because of limited moisture, but there are some growers quite pleased with their yields. And then you go to areas that did not get rainfall, and in some cases the oats came out into head without, like, barely halfway to your knee. And in those situations, the growers are just saying, oh man, I need the forage. We're going to take it, but it's half normal yields. And that it almost makes me wonder if it's worthwhile harvesting. It's to that point.
I hate to say it, but that's a prime opportunity for turning the animals out. Because did you know, Pete, that livestock have 4 feet and a heartbeat, and they can actually walk to their food and spread their manure at the same time? It's wild. I know it's very hard. Okay, I'm being somewhat facetious.
There has to be a livestock producer in the area that wants that, and fencing is always an issue, right? Like a lot of southwestern Ontario, Lyndsey, there aren't fences for miles and miles.
I'm telling you, give me a call about your temporary fencing solutions, but also water. And this is the one that I don't think. I will not make light of. If you're going to bring cows to cover crop, let's say, cows drink an awful lot of water, and you better have a plan for getting them the water. So I actually think the fencing solution is the easier part. I really think it's about water, and anyone I know who is grazing covers or crop aftermath with their cattle, that's one of the key things they have to plan for is cattle drink an awful lot of water, so you better be hauling it. So there you go. Okay, yeah, exactly. Okay, let's pause there for a moment. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back with more RealAg Radio right after this.
Built on over 100 years of seed innovation and unwavering commitment to farmers, Pioneer 100 Series canola hybrids deliver a step change in yield performance and agronomic traits. This isn't just better canola, it's different canola. Pioneer 100 Series. Contact your local Pioneer sales representative or visit pioneer.com/100 series to learn more today.
If you're involved in the agriculture industry, it's important to stay informed on all the latest issues affecting your business. At RealAgriculture.com, we offer fast, reliable news, information, and insights to help you keep on top of all of the latest in Canadian agriculture. Visit RealAgriculture.com and sign up for our free daily newsletter covering everything from news, agronomy, animal agriculture, and much more. Visit RealAgriculture.com/subscribe today.
RealAg Radio is Canada's only daily radio show focused on agriculture. Get expert advice on Agronomic Monday. Tuesdays and Wednesdays will cover a broad range of issues. Thursday we'll hear from farmers across the country on the Farmer Rapid Fire. And we'll wrap things up Fridays with the RealAg Issues panel with Kelvin Hepner and Lyndsey Smith. Join us Monday through Friday at 4:30 Eastern. And don't forget about the replay at 7 in the morning on Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM.
Welcome back to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio, Channel 147, Sirius XM. I am your host for the day, Lyndsey Smith, and joining me now, it's Autumn Barnes with today's Product Spotlight. And Autumn is working with Alberta Canola on a research survey. Super exciting. Welcome here, Autumn.
Thanks, Lyndsey.
Now, before we hop into the research survey itself and who should answer and all those sorts of great things, who is Alberta Canola? How does Alberta Canola support farmers?
Alberta Canola is a farmer-funded and directed organization that represents the around 12,000 canola farmers in Alberta. And they do that by taking in a levy of the checkoff dollars from farmers and then using that money to support farmers investing in research, extension, advocacy, consumer engagement, market development, a lot of these initiatives that support the long-term success of canola farmers in Alberta.
Okay, so the Alberta Canola Research Survey, what is it all about? What might someone expect from the survey? Why is Alberta Canola asking this question?
Yeah, so we invest a significant amount of money in research projects every year. We do put quite a bit of work into looking at research priorities, but there's been questions about different initiatives and activities that we could be funding or supporting in other ways. And so as an organization, Alberta Canola decided it would be a good idea to go to their farmers, their ratepayers, and get a mandate to participate in some of these activities. So in the research survey, there's two parts. So there's a phase 1 survey, which growers can visit albertacanola.com/survey, complete like a quick online form. And then when they're done that, they have the opportunity to opt into a phone survey as well afterwards, like about a 10-minute, 8-minute phone call with Insightrix, who will ask some more in-depth questions. And that's going to help drive the types of things that Alberta Canola invests research dollars in going forward.
This really does to me seem like a chance to let the organization know. Individual farmers could let the organization know, where they want to see their dollars being spent. Obviously, it's only open to Alberta producers, but, who should take part? Should, every canola producer? Is it just those that really feel strongly about this? Who would you encourage to take the time to answer these questions?
Every single canola farmer in Alberta. And as well, there is an opportunity for agronomists who work for canola farmers to participate in the survey as well if they're helping make production decisions. But, sometimes you get this group of engaged farmers who show up to things, who have more of a say in initiatives, and that group is really important. But we also want to hear from the folks who maybe don't show up for meetings or don't provide feedback or sit on boards or participate. We want to make sure that as we're developing programs going forward, they're a fit for all of our ratepayers.
So you touched on it briefly, but I want to dig in a little bit on, a research survey. Why now? What is sort of happening in this moment that makes a survey like this so important, and why it's so important to capture some of that feedback, as you said, from the farmers, from agronomists, from those that maybe don't get their voice heard all the time? Why is now the time for this research survey?
Yeah, so Alberta Canola is coming out of strategic planning and been working on a strategic plan the past few years. And so there's always questions about what to invest research dollars in and how we're going to get the most impact out of them. We've seen a lot of change in the industry as well. And so the research committee, the board, felt that this was a really good time to go to growers and ask some questions about the types of investments, initiatives, whether it's research projects or different research initiatives that we might want to fund. We fund research that identifies new genetic traits. We fund research that finds tools or develops tools for pest management. There's different applied research initiatives. There's all sorts of groups and researchers with their hands out looking for some support for different ideas in research. And so we really thought that this was a really opportune time to go to growers and make sure that as we go forward and grow our research portfolio, that the work we're doing, the work we're supporting, has been clearly supported by our farmers.
So this is your chance, farmers. If you're in Alberta and you grow canola or advise those that do, this is your chance to have your voice heard. Now, you did mention, of course, where farmers can go. Let's touch on that one more time, where producers or agronomists can go to actually answer the survey. And then sort of what happens when the survey is done. How long do we have? And where might we see sort of the outcome of this?
Yeah, great question. So if producers answer the survey by October 27th, they'll be entered to win $100 Visa gift card. So by October 27th at albertacanola.com/survey. As far as how you're going to see the results, this is a really important piece. We want to make sure this is a transparent process. And so we're going to be sharing the results out at meetings. So we're going to be wrapped with the survey with both phases around the new year. So we'll have data in January. So expect in the springtime to be hearing more about, what we heard from farmers and what we're going to be doing with that information. We were able to get the support from ARDAR or some support from ARDAR to even complete the survey in the first place. So we're really grateful for their support, and we'll be sharing that information and what we've learned with them, because they're another major research funder in the province, and then with our sister organizations across the prairies. So yeah, getting this out. So it's not something that's just going to sit on the shelf. We'll read it. We'll say, great, we've done our due diligence and tick a box. This is really about actioning and moving forward and building programming that fits the needs of our farmers.
Wonderful. Okay. Autumn Barnes with Alberta Canola. Thank you so much for joining me on the show today.
Thanks.
All right. We'll be back with more RealAg Radio right after this.
What were the issues in your fields this year? Did you do a soil sample? What is your soil sample telling you about some of the nutrient issues that you might be having going into next year? What herbicides did you use? What residues you might be concerned about? What weed issues did you have? What crop residues did you have? How well do you know your fields?
Get the answers to all the questions you have about your pulse crop at the Pulse School on RealAgriculture.com.
Peter Johnson at WheatPete, RealAgriculture.com. I'm the host of The Word, and I love doing The Word. I love the questions. I love the challenges. I love having to apply agronomics to all over the globe and areas outside of my normal jurisdiction. Also, I love the feedback the most, where growers challenge me, tell me about their plot results, help me to learn. The Word, absolutely the best part of my day.
Welcome back to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio, Channel 147, Sirius XM. I am your host for this Agronomic Monday, Lyndsey Smith, and the future of Canadian food is strong. And FCC is ready to help the next generation of innovators like you with financing tailored to your needs and resources to help you keep growing. To get started, visit fcc.ca/youngfarmer. All right, we bring in Peter Pete Johnson. Pete, we did talk about the winter wheat crop, and I forgot to ask, because this is a key question. I'm looking at these fields in my neighborhood where, they do look really good. There was very low moisture. Timing was a little late. There's always this question of seeding rates with winter wheat, right? So earlier you go lower, later you go higher, but then you throw this whole, you're seeding into dust. Do I go higher or lower? How do we tackle that question? And what questions have you fielded from the audience?
Yeah, so it's always a great question, Lyndsey. And I think one of the things that strikes me the most is how reluctant growers are to go with reduced seeding rates. And I get it because I farm as well. And you go to the field and you just like you just want to put on enough seed. And if you're going to err, you're going to err on the high side. And the same thing, by the way, happens here with winter canola. If you look at our winter canola seeding rates, they are much higher than they are in Europe. And that's because we just haven't got that comfort with lower seeding rates. So I drive past a field of wheat quite frequently on my way to play practice, now to play performances. Actually, we're performing now. And that field was seeded very early following, I think it was cranberry beans. And I don't think they dropped their seeding rate. And it all got into moisture. And oh my gosh, that field is so thick and so lush. And next year, it is going to be a lodging nightmare, I'm afraid. So when you say, what is the right seeding rate? It so depends on, are you in the right window? Are you early? Are you late? But anytime that you are seeding into dust because you don't know when the rain will come, you just have to assume that you're planting late and you plant a higher population. And the challenge is if it rains the next day and you didn't see that rain coming, then you have to manage lodging. But I really don't like going at low seeding rates when I don't know that crop is going to come out of the ground. If you know you have good moisture, then we are as low as 0.8 million seeds per acre. With winter wheat crops seeded early, we are as much as 2.5 million seeds per acre on heavy clay soils planted late. And so that's basically 3 times the seeding rate. When you look at that, it's a moving target, but man, you can definitely use too much seed.
What's that in bushels, though?
Oh, yeah.
This is how to make Wheat Pete's head explode. Okay. No, I think, and that is a great outline of just how difficult it can be. I mean, let's face it, in deciding that seeding rate, you don't want to short the crop, right? But I mean, if it's early and conditions are good, like wheat can make an incredible amount of tillers that will actually make a head and actually contribute to yield. So, you just got to get comfortable with it, I guess. You could split a field. You could do trials.
100%. But the challenge is if it can make a lot of heads, but the real challenge becomes lodging, right? Mm-hmm. One individual seed that we planted just the Coles Notes version is we got 78 heads from one seed in a little trial that we did. And so you just go, ooh, baby, 7. I mean, they clearly weren't all big heads, but 78 heads of one seed.
So it is remarkable what it can do. Okay, now you are seeing, though, as well, to note corn row syndrome in wheat. What is that about? So what is it, and what conditions have led to it?
So wheat loves phosphorus, Lyndsey. I mean, how many times have we talked about that? There's 3 things that are important to wheat in the fall. It's called phosphorus, phosphorus, and phosphorus. And what's really interesting is that a lot of growers will, like in Ontario at least, they've listened to this guy called Wheat Pete enough that they sort of buy into the fact that we have to put phosphorus with the wheat seed. And so there are people who use liquid starter with their wheat field, or with their wheat seed rather, pop up, call it what you will. And you're getting a small amount of phosphorus right with the seed. But wheat is such a phosphorus hog that you can see the corn rows from 2 years previously. And what I find really interesting this fall, and I'm sure it's that the dry weather has exacerbated it, but even where we use just the liquid starter on the corn crop 2 years previous. So we put down 5 gallons of a 1034-0 or a 624-6 or something like that. So realistically, we're looking at 16 pounds of phosphorus every 30 inches 2 years ago. And you can still see those show up this fall, even though we put another 16 pounds of phosphorus with the wheat seed itself. And it shows you 2 things. One, if you don't disturb the soil, phosphorus doesn't move. And there's some really great work out of Purdue that says that, 2 years after the fact, the concentration of phosphorus in that band where you put the band there is still 11 times higher than it is in the surrounding soil. And so that phosphorus, that boost in phosphorus availability hangs around for a long time. And it just also shows you how much wheat wants phosphorus, because 16 pounds on a low to medium testing soil, right with the wheat seed, just doesn't get it over the hump entirely.
Amazing. And just, it is a really a visual reminder of exactly what's going on below ground, which I think is absolutely super cool. Now, I want to back up a little bit because we're talking phosphorus. There are questions, of course, about fall application of fertilizer. We are now October 20th. Questions coming in about phosphorus specifically. Now, so this is just phosphorus applications. This isn't with the seed or with the wheat crop. What do we need to think about? What thought process should we be using when we're deciding, hey, is now a good time to be applying our phosphorus needs for next year?
And so, Lyndsey, if it's phosphorus, if you were living in Ohio, if I recall correctly, it's always a little bit sketchy, but there's a part of the winter, and I believe it's from November to April. It might be November to March. It is actually legislated that you cannot, let me emphasize, not apply phosphorus to the soil in a broadcast application. And that's because it sits on the soil surface, and when it rains, the soil is often saturated, and that rainfall runs off the soil surface, and it takes the phosphorus, it dissolves the phosphorus granule, and it carries with it, and it goes right into the water course, and now we're putting way too much phosphorus into Lake Erie. So if you are broadcasting phosphorus now, it is 100% wrong, because number one, most crops are pretty much done growth. I mean, it's turning cold, as you said. As of today, it looks like our extended summer has ended. So the amount of growth we're going to get from here on in is incredibly limited. If you get very little growth, you get very little phosphorus uptake. And on the soil surface, it's just prone to loss. Plus, even if it doesn't run off, now we have an extended period of time where it can tie up in the soil and become less available to the crop next spring. So if it's phosphorus, the answer is do it next spring or get it in the ground in a band. Those are the two options in my mind for this time of year. Or the two options, not for this time of year. One option for this time of year is in the ground in a band, so it'll be there for next spring. Or the other option is you wait till next spring. Potash, totally different. But phosphorus or nitrogen right now just doesn't make sense.
Now, you mentioned, of course, fall conditions usually, like November, I'm dreading November. November is gray and it is wet and it is cold and maybe we get some snow flurries and all those sorts of things. And that, to me, exactly that. Runoff, all bad news. Right now, though, Pete, and we got rain today. We got rain this morning. And because it's so dry, you would think, the rain would just soak right in. Well, no. We actually have rain, or we have puddles sitting in places where, for the amount of rain we got, I feel like there shouldn't be puddles. So after a really, really dry spell, my concern would be if you broadcast that phosphorus ahead of a rain thinking, great, it'll soak it in. I would be concerned about runoff even in very dry conditions.
And you are absolutely right, Lyndsey. And it depends on the soil and how good you have for infiltration. But in many soils, they've just sealed off. When you get super dry and you have high temperatures, just like the soils will seal off, just like if you have a pot of a potted plant on your porch, you have a mum, and you let it get so dry that the thing wilts, and you say, oh, I better water it, and you go to water it, and the water doesn't go into the soil in that pot, even though it's this nice vermiculite-y, peaty stuff. No, it's so sealed off, it runs across the surface, down the sides, and out the bottom of the pot. And the same thing tends to happen with soils, is if they get that dry, trying to get that water to infiltrate becomes really, really tough. So you're right. It ponds. If it ponds, you know that phosphorus is moving, even if it just ponds in your field. What it does is it takes that phosphorus that you have uniformly applied over the whole field and it dissolves it and it moves it into the puddle. And so now I get areas of high phosphorus concentration and areas of low phosphorus concentration that I don't want. I want it uniformly applied. And if it does run off, then absolutely it's taking that phosphorus with it.
Okay. So there you go, everybody. Unless it's going in the ground, do it in the spring. Okay. That's phosphorus and nitrogen. As you said, potash, different story. Let's take a quick break. And Pete, can you stick around for one more segment?
Sure, Lyndsey, absolutely.
Okay. All right, let's do that then. We'll take a quick break and we'll be back with more RealAg Radio right after this.
If you only listen to RealAg Radio, you only get half the picture. For greater insight into the issues that affect farming, tune in to RealAgriculture.com. Crops, livestock, machinery, farm management, and the markets, even food and travel. Real Agriculture Online digs deeper into the topics that affect the way you work and live. So get connected today. Read, watch, and listen to the people who know at RealAgriculture.com.
I'm Lyndsey Smith, host of The Agronomist, and I want to thank you for tuning in for over 200 episodes of our beloved little program. Join me Monday nights, 8 p.m. Eastern on YouTube for our live and interactive agronomy Q&A. Each week, our guest panel will handle some of your toughest agronomic questions live, streaming on YouTube, Facebook, X, and RealAgriculture.com. Tune in Monday nights or go to RealAgriculture.com/agronomist and sign up for our email notifications and don't miss an episode. Welcome back to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio, Channel 147, Sirius XM. It is Agronomic Monday. It is October 20th, and I am your host, Lyndsey Smith. A reminder, of course, that the Canadian Agri-Food Policy Institute is driving bold policy solutions for a resilient Canadian agri-food system, building a stronger future for Canadian agriculture. Visit capi-icpa.com to discover how. And a quick note, Capi and Real Agriculture hosting a webinar on the 23rd. Kelvin, I believe, will be hosting and moderating. Get signed up. So head on over to Capi and get registered for that webinar. Talking, well, it's Capi, it's all policy, it's all risk, it's all about ag innovation this coming week. So that's pretty cool. And speaking of ag innovation, we've got Pete Johnson here, who is an innovative guy, especially when it comes to the theater. You did mention it in the last segment. I did want to touch on that. You can't get away with that. What is the latest production, Pete, and how can people find it?
So our latest production is Deadline at Theatre Woodstock, and I am just this grumpy old curmudgeon that is way too sexist.
Goodness, Pete.
Oh yeah, it is so not who I am, but it's just a ton of fun to develop that character and portray it on the stage and try to pull it off. And so it is a murder mystery, and we're having a lot of fun with that production. We close out this weekend, so Thursday and Friday nights, Saturday and Sunday matinee, and Theatre Woodstock is if people are interested.
Okay, that is a full weekend. Very cool. Check it out. Also, very quickly, before we run out of time in the segment and the show, you are hosting The Agronomist tonight for me, which thank you very much. Dr. Jeff Shano and Dr. Dave Hooker. Check it out, 8 p.m. Eastern. I'm a little jealous, Pete, that you are hosting the show because, of course, Jeff and Dave just so many cool observations and insight. And what are you going to talk about tonight?
Yeah, so both of them, such a wealth of information. And I thank you for letting me host this, Lyndsey, because it will be cool. We are going to talk about how soil reacts during a drought, basically, or how dry weather impacts soil. And to me, what are the management things that I can do to help overcome the impact of the drought? And what partly drove me to suggest that we do this is the fact that I'm combining my own corn, and in basically 1,100 feet, because I go across the farm, just people will wonder why it doesn't matter, but in 1,100 feet on my yield monitor, which by the way is well calibrated, every pass I will see a 150 bushel per acre and a 250 bushel per acre, and sometimes, bigger swings than that. But it's almost double the yield in 1,100 feet, and it's all managed the same. And so you just go, well, what's going on? Well, it's the subsoil. It's what the glaciers left for me. And so in that situation, are there things that I can do from a management standpoint? Are there things moving forward? There's just so many questions I have there, and that's what we're going to talk about. And I think that's way cool. And after the drought in Ontario and the drought in the east, right, out in the Maritimes, across Canada, we can have droughts. We know we can have droughts in the prairies, but man, we can have them in eastern Canada as well. So it will be, I think, an awesome session.
I'm excited to watch the replay, which of course you can find on YouTube or at realagriculture.com/agronomists. All right. So on that note, though, about dry conditions and subsoil moisture, etc., edible beans, soybean yields, lots of variability there too. But what are you hearing as far as, how things have turned out for those crops?
Yeah. So for all crops, for many people, the yields have been, I would say, not as good as average, but a bit better than they expected. Some of the corn yields that are coming off in the really droughted areas, there's as low as 30 bushels per acre. So there are some real disasters, but some areas, Huron County, where it was super dry and on sandy soil, and you could see that the sand knolls burnt right off, there's still 160, 170 bushel corn. So there are some reasonable yields out there. On the soybean front, what has really astounded us this year, and it's almost the flip with edible beans, but with soybeans, typically we have pushed growers, plant early, get them in early. They'll take the cold weather. Then you get your winter wheat planted better, more timely. Todd put his planting date study on soybeans up on Twitter and tagged me in, and it cost him about 9 bushels per acre of soybean yield to plant at the end of April versus the middle of May this year. And you just say, what are you talking about? We always say plant early, and now this year we actually got lower yields by doing that. And I sent that back, right? It's like, wow, that didn't help you this year. And his reply was, in 5 years, this is the first time that his early planted soybeans did not out yield his later planted soybeans. And you just go back to the spring. The spring turned super cool and damp. On May the 1st, it just changed. It was great the last week of April, planted into perfect conditions, and then you got 2 weeks, or actually most of May, that was backwards. And so those early planted soybeans suffered. The late planted soybeans, there are double crop soybeans planted after peas that are making almost 60 bushels per acre. That's more yield out of double crop planted soybeans after peas than Wheat Pete got on his own soybean crop, which was a full season soybean crop. And you just go, how can that happen? Even up in Bruce County, late planted soybeans at 50 plus bushels per acre, like the later planting seems like it has paid dividends this year on the soybean crop. And I think it's because we did get some late showers in many of those areas. It was dry July. It was dry early August. So the early soybeans suffered way more. The later planted soybeans, they came through. The edible beans are the opposite way. Late planted edibles this year, we got hot and dry right when they flowered. So the earlier planted edibles, the ones in the first 10 days of June, they did much better than the ones that were planted June 20th. And in fact, some of the cranberry beans planted on June 20th, because cranberry beans are really susceptible to high temperatures. It was hot when they flowered, and we got a lot of empty pods, and yields are disappointing.
Now, so from all of that, though, it really does show that, the 1 year in 5 that early planting doesn't pay. I mean, I think that's excellent context, because so often we have that recency bias, right? Like, I got burned last year with early planting, I'm going to wait. But 4 years out of 5, you shouldn't. So you really do have to think about the bigger picture.
Well, and Lyndsey, my wheat was all planted by September the 21st.
Yeah, that's kind of nice.
Exactly, like in the perfect conditions. No, I'm still going to push to plant soybeans early. Nothing, I shouldn't say nothing, but almost nothing works 100% of the time. That's right. And so you really do have to take the average.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and we'll call Horst Bonner. He'll tell us we're right. Okay. Also, though, questions coming in on rolling emerged triticale. I love this question. So should we do it? When should we, if we should? And why are we rolling our emerged triticale?
So again, on Twitter, a question around, got the triticale planted because we want to plant it as soon as we can, the silage off, plant it. Oh gosh, now I look at it and it's emerged and I'm walking through it and there's a ton of rocks. And this is triticale for forage. Mm-hmm. So can I roll that triticale after it's emerged so that I can push the rocks down into the ground and I don't wreck my disc bind next spring when I go out there to cut that forage? And the answer is absolutely. The growing point is below ground. In fact, in the UK, they will sometimes roll winter cereals in the spring because they feel that it gets the cereal crop to tiller more. Now, I have zero data to support that. In fact, we tried it. We could not make it work. And maybe it's because we're just too wet in the spring. I don't know. But you can roll winter triticale anytime in the fall because the growing point is not going to come above the ground until next spring. So the only time you might not want to do it is if you actually had frost on the winter triticale leaves. We know that driving on crops that have white frost on the leaves, that's all bad. So I would say if there's frost on it, don't do it. If it's not frosty, have at it. Get those rocks pushed in the ground. It's going to be okay. And Lyndsey, just on that note, talking about the rolling things, but the one other that makes me think about it, you roll, you get dust. We did not mention the dust that we are seeing at harvest this year and how important that is from a safety perspective.
That is a very key point, and I do want to talk about that because we have touched on it a few times, whether it's on Wheat Pete's Word on Wednesdays or on this show and also in the Canola School, talking about, of course, mold on plants that can cause dusty conditions. I'll tell you, Pete, I don't know if it was a particular mold or fungus or if it was just how dry it was, but watching the combines roll in the soybeans, just so much dust. And you heard from a listener who was encouraged then to check the cab filter and some just a phenomenal grossness, but taking care of himself.
Yeah, so Scott sent me a text just saying he listened to that, and since he's listened to that, he's been cleaning his cab air filter every day, and he just says, I'm astounded. I had no clue that it would collect that much dust. And by the way, now that I'm doing that, my combine windows inside the cab stay cleaner. And at the end of a 12-hour day in the combine, I feel better. So the air quality is just that much improved. And dust, farmer's lung, it's a real health hazard to agriculture. So keep those combine air filters cleaned out.
Mm-hmm. There's a reason they are there. Use them, clean them out, and take care of yourself for sure. And of course, if you're cleaning a bin or anything like that, wear the appropriate PPE. Whether or not it's disease related, right, to the crop, it's just particulate, and we just don't need to be breathing it in. So I love that farmers let us know when they've heard something we've talked about and they're taking action to take care of themselves. It always makes me happy. So Pete, thank you for that, and good luck tonight on The Agronomist. We've got to wrap up the show, but everybody go 8 p.m. Eastern. It goes live, so you get to chat with Wheat Pete live on YouTube, on Facebook, on X, LinkedIn, you name it, we're there. Good luck tonight, Pete.
Thanks, Lyndsey. I'm looking forward to it. Talk to you soon.
All right, that does it for today's show. I'll be back hosting tomorrow as well, so please tune in 4:30 Eastern right here on Rural Radio Channel 147, Sirius XM. Cheers, everybody.